Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about a half, three-quarter capitulation by the administration in one of the cases. There are now four in which the United States pretty clearly has deported someone in violation of law. Not simply they didn't get due process, but literally they weren't supposed to be deported. There was an extant order and they did it anyway. This guy is known as Chris Dunn in the papers. He came to the United States as an unaccompanied minor, and there were a class of such people who a few years ago under the Biden administration in a overall class action received a judicial order saying don't deport them for now. Notwithstanding which, on March 15th, remember that's the big first day when they ferried everyone down to El Salvador to the CCOT high security prison, notwithstanding Judge Boasberg saying don't do that. Those are still being unscrambled and Boasberg will figure out what to do. Anyway, Chris Dunn goes down on that flight. And his case, he now brings a case, so he's there in the Fourth Circuit in Baltimore before Judge Stephanie Gallagher, who rules, you guys violated the order. I want you to do all you can, the magic words of facilitate now, to bring him back and give him some notice process to which he is entitled. Maybe then it winds up resulting, as could be the case for any of these people who haven't received due process, in the deportation, but you haven't done it right, and there was this outstanding order that you just ignored. Now, the Trump administration tried to say that it had deployed this magic wand power where the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, just says for cryptic or opaque reasons, this could be a risk to national security, and that somehow had superseded the already in place order for this class of minors, or who were minors when they came to the States. Gallagher rejected that argument and said, that order still applied and you need to facilitate his return. The Trump administration then did, guess what? I think we can now begin to fill in the numbers with all these. Moved for emergency relief in the Fourth Circuit. And by a 2-1 ruling, the Fourth Circuit gave a really stern uprating to the administration. So they wrote, as has happened all too often, as is becoming far too common, this is Judge Gregory of the Fourth Circuit, we are confronted again with the efforts of the executive branch to set aside the rule of law in pursuit of its goals. Man, oh man, that is tough language coming from a court of appeals, and really is quite a slap. So then it goes back to Gallagher, who orders the facilitation of return. And that's when we get this really interesting filing yesterday from the Department of Justice, which says Marco Rubio personally is handling the negotiations with El Salvador about it says it in general terms, persons subject to the court's order detained in El Salvador. So it doesn't exactly single out Chris Dunn. Nevertheless, on the one hand, it's quite a departure, right? They have said to date again and again and again, beginning with Abrego Garcia, who, by the way, is invoked repeatedly in that Fourth Circuit opinion. That's the sort of original sin here that courts around the country are getting more and more intolerant of. The United States continues to be adamant and try to resist there at all efforts, and say, moreover, that if Abrego Garcia comes back, they're going to ship him right out. How can they say that? How can they know that? Anyway, they're digging a hole for themselves with the courts, and it's getting deeper, and the Fourth Circuit opinion shows it. So they say, okay, Marco Rubio, here's my representation to you, court. I've been authorized, says the the Department of Justice litigator, to tell you this much. That itself is a departure, right? We've had a series of appearances in which awkward, flat-footed DOJ lawyers have said, I don't know what's happening and I can't tell you anything. And the one guy who said, here's my understanding, gets fired by Pam Bondi. Here they say, based on his deep, and this is an authorized statement, so you know it's worked out within the administration, executive branch. Who knows, Stephen Miller and the Hawks and Doves, whatever a dove means within this crowd, etc. But based on his deep diplomatic experience with El Salvador and the secretary's familiarity with political and diplomatic sensitivities in that country, he is personally handling the discussions with the government of El Salvador regarding persons subject to the court's orders detained in El Salvador. Okay, now first, the flavor of that, right, is, oh, what a tough mission that we're sending our man Marco in to handle personally. That strikes me as quite implausible, right? We have all these people who we are paying money to El Salvador to house down there. We are the customer. Moreover, President Bukele has to and clearly wants to be in the U.S.'s and Trump's good graces. And I think bringing him back or any of the four back would be a matter of a quick, if he really knows him so well, you know, Marco to Bukele phone call, hey, can we have this one? And he'd be back immediately. So somehow they're still dramatizing the high bars and obstacles of bringing them back. So that's, on the one hand, setting the stage for them to come in with another filing that would, in fact, if they said it, be pretty hard for courts to get around, which would be something like, I, Marco Rubio, with my deep diplomatic experience with El Salvador, just couldn't get it done. I'm so sorry. We tried to facilitate all we could. We followed the court's orders and we weren't able to do it. Now, of course, then we'd be left with a really ugly situation where the U.S.'s dereliction, sending people down they shouldn't have, result in a disappearance that they can't undo, and there will be subsequent lawsuits and the like. But in the meantime, he's saying he's trying to do it, and it would be also a little strange, in some ways stranger, for the Secretary of State, who has all this experience, et cetera, not to be able to work it out. So it might be they're setting the stage for him to play a hero and for them to suggest they are bending over backwards to comply with the courts. They brought in the only guy who could do it, and he managed Mission Impossible and got Chris Dunn back here. So it's a far cry from the stance to date with Abrego Garcia and even Chris Dunn until the Fourth Circuit ruled, in which they were basically saying, no, can't do anything tough, and you can't even ask us. They're permitting courts to inquire. They are answering courts with sort of approved formulations, and they are attesting to their making what sound like, you know, very strong efforts. To me, the background makes it seem overstated there. I don't think it should be that big a deal, but we'll see what the U.S.'s next move is. But it's a big move away from the go to hell, we're not going to tell you anything, this is all up to us. So here and in other cases, they are flinching. Nobody's come back yet, though there's the one guy who they said we're getting a plane for. How hard could that be? But to date, no one's come back, but nor are they saying we won't do it, we can't do it, we won't even talk to you about doing it. And indeed, here they're representing that they're going to maximum lengths by having Super Mario come in personally to get the job done. It's going to be strange if he can't. And if he can, of course, that then breaks the whole model of, sorry, we can't do anything to bring them back, and will create additional pressure on other mistakenly deported folks, beginning first and foremost with Abrego Garcia. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.